So the Championship is back, and boy did it come back with a bang. We got a lot to talk about today. So guys, welcome back to the channel. There's always a lot to go over in today's video. We're going to be discussing all of this weekend's action, and as well as that, I will be giving you guys my midweek score predictions for what I see happening in the midweek fixtures that we got going on. So as always, do get your thoughts in the comments down below, and do get your score predictions in there as well. Speaking of your score predictions, I will put on screen now you guys who did successfully get a prediction correct this weekend. I had a pretty decent one. I got two of mine spot on: Millwall against Cardiff and Swansea against Rotherham. But a big shout out goes to Logan Spavin for being the only person to correctly predict Bournemouth 4, Reading 2, and for SWFC going up for being the only person to correctly predict Barnsley 2, Forest 0. Two great scorelines there. If we then take a look at what that means for the prediction league, I'm moving up in the world, joined second now on 96 points. I'm coming for that #1 spot, which is still occupied by Juvest FC. But a bit of movement going on around the bottom of the league as well. We've seen a couple of other new people come into it, so all still to play for. As always, get your score predictions in the comments down below for a chance to be involved. And as always, before we do get into anything, make sure to go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We're pushing our way towards 30,000 subscribers, so if you could help do that, that will be massively appreciated. Also, leave a like if you're going to enjoy. But without any further ado, let's talk about these games. And starting out with Friday night's game, which was a goalless draw between Coventry and Birmingham. It was a cracker for Championship action, but not the best game that we had going on Friday night. Coventry, who we had criticised a little bit so far this season in terms of their defensive structure and how they'd shipped too many goals so far this season. In this game, it looked like they came into it with the mentality to shut up shop, be sound defensively, albeit they didn't have all too much going forward. You know, Walker moving forward tried his best, but really was feeding on scraps of what little service he did get. But it will be the away side Birmingham who would have been the more disappointed out of the two sides not to go on and win this one. They had three pretty big chances, all of which fell to Djukovic. He just couldn't quite manage to angle any of them on target. Had one which came off the bar, which was really unlucky. But one player from Birmingham who I wanted to pick out was San Jose. He's a player who just oozes class, and the more I watch of him, he just makes things look so simple. He's an absolute gem in there that Birmingham have got in midfield, and you can tell at times that he's just playing on a different wavelength to everyone else around him. He is a player who's got real pedigree about him, and to be honest, there's quite a bit to like about that Birmingham midfield. It's just that some of the other areas just aren't quite up to scratch at the moment. I think that Coventry will take the 0-0 draw, albeit it wasn't the most thrilling game that they've been involved in so far this season. It's a point on the board and a clean sheet, which will, you know, they'll take confidence from moving forward. But then moving on to Saturday's early kickoff, we had an absolute cracker being played out. Bournemouth 4, Reading 2. The first half very much belonged to the away side, despite Bournemouth having a lot of the ball, you have to say. They just weren't very penetrating with it. It was a lot of possession for possession's sake. Nothing really in and around the final third to threaten Reading, who defended quite well. And they took their chances going forward. This was the Reading who kick-started this season. They didn't have all too much of the ball, but they were clinical when their chances came around. Alpha Semedo does really well to win the penalty, a little bit sloppy from Begovic, but he more than made up for that with a superb save in the second half. Zhao tucks that penalty away. The second goal brilliantly worked from Reading, some nice football, slipped in beautifully by Ajaria, and then Aluko finishes to make it 2-0 for Reading. At that point, it's looking like a tough game for Bournemouth to get back into it, but they more than show their quality in their second half with some brilliantly worked goals. 56 minutes, Dom Solanke gets Bournemouth back into it. The Danjuma goal brilliantly worked. Some real classic football here from Bournemouth. This one's all about the pass and the movement of Danjuma, and the finishing at the near post, absolutely brilliant. But I think the goal of the game has to go to Lewis Cook with an absolute worldie, brilliant technique. It takes one touch to lay himself off and then just curls it beautifully into the top corner past Raphael. He stood no chance with that one. And at 3-2 actually, Reading did have, like I say, a brilliant chance to get back into it, but Begovic makes an absolutely unbelievable save to deny Lucas Chow. And then Bournemouth ultimately wrap it up as Raphael has an absolute disaster class, makes a real meal out of coming out the Viz box. He gets caught in a real tangle with Dom Solanke where the striker comes out on top, and he finishes well to make it 4-2 to Bournemouth. So Reading's defensive issues carry on into this week, and all their hard work in the first half was outdone by some really classy play by Bournemouth in the second, who you have to say at the moment really are looking quite strong. Next up then we have Barnsley claiming all 3 points as they saw off Nottingham Forest by 2-0. Very much a game which ebbed and flowed. Both sides had spells where they were on top for this game. Barnsley, I mean, they were denied 3 times by the woodwork in this one. Cully Rudra really pulling the strings for them moving forward. In terms of Nottingham Forest, it just wasn't happening for them going forward. Credit to them, they created a lot more than they usually would in this sort of game, but Jack Walton in net for Barnsley had an absolute worldie of a game. He was level to absolutely everything that Forest threw at him. You know, Guerrero had 2 really good chances. Lyle Taylor had a brilliant header in the second half, which was well saved by him. I actually saw a stat the other day. No side has missed more big chances in the league so far this season than Nottingham Forest. 18 big chances they've missed, so it's just not falling for them moving forward. But eventually for Barnsley in the second half, it did happen, and what a strike it was from Callum Styles. No doubt one of the most exciting up-and-coming players in the Championship at the moment. Barnsley have got quite a few youngsters who I'm excited to see how they develop. And then the second goal for Woodrow, finally he deservedly got his goal. It was some great work by Britton down that right-hand side, cuts the ball back in for Woodrow, and he finishes well to make it 2-4 Barnsley. And the big 3 points for Barnsley, you have to say. In terms of Nottingham Forest though, they've got some tough matches coming up now. In their next 6 matches, Forest go up against Bournemouth, Swansea, Watford, Reading, Norwich and Brentford. There was the feeling last season that Forest were a little bit better against the sort of big sides in the Championship, but they'll need that to be true this season. It's a tough run of fixtures they've got there, but for Barnsley, really impressive stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do moving forward this season now. Next up then we have Bristol City beating Derby by 1-0. Derby now stay rooted to the bottom of the Championship, and things are worrying. They've got some what you believe to be winnable fixtures coming up, but if they don't get anything out of these next sort of like 3 matches, they really will be in a perilous position. Only 6 points accumulated this far into this season, and they did have a lot of the ball for this game as well. Bristol City allowed them to have the ball in those positions because they're just not penetrating enough. There seems to be this real block with Derby at the moment, whereby when they get into the opposition's, you know, half in the final third, there's a real lack of belief with them at the moment. There was a couple instances where they choose to take a bit of an audacious long shot instead of trying to play the ball into a bit of a better area to score from. I think they've been a little bit guilty of that throughout the season so far, but Bristol City took their chance when it came around. Jeju off the bench, ultimately that was the difference between these two sides in this one. Really nice finish from him. Semenyo I thought was a real live wire for the home side as well. He was popping up in some really nice pockets, causing all sorts of problems. And for Bristol City, considering it wasn't really their sort of best performance of the season so far, they're now sat 3rd in the Championship, only 1 point off top. It's been an absolutely fantastic start to the season from them. I think what we have seen from Bristol City so far this season is their ability to win sort of matches in different ways. For Derby though, it's going to be a tough midweek fixture against Middlesbrough. Luton against Blackburn, these two sides cancelled each other out, and ultimately it finished as a 1-1 draw. It was probably the home side who started out as the better of the two sides. Kaminski was forced into a couple of decent saves, but Blackburn did grow into the game gradually and probably reacted well when Luton eventually took the lead. It was a nice finish from Berry, the ball coming in from the box from the left-hand side. He touched it on, and that was enough to just about squirm past Kaminski. But like I said, after that, Blackburn did react well. The equaliser coming just 3 minutes later. Harvey Elliott, who probably had one of his more quieter matches for Blackburn in this match, brilliant ball across the pitch into Barry Douglas, who then tees it off to Gallagher, who tucks in well to make it 1-1. And then there was a fair bit of controversy towards the end of this match. It was Blackburn who were really pushing for that winner late onto it, and with about a minute to go, Ben Brereton goes down in the box. The referee blows his whistle but gives it the other way for a dive. The replay, I've seen it, it's tough to see, but I mean, to me it looked like a penalty. Blackburn and Luton fans, do let me know in the comments down below what you guys made of that decision, but nevertheless it was a competitive match between the two sides. Both keepers forced into a fair few amount of saves, but ultimately there was nothing between the two of them. Next up to the Riversiders, Norwich put an end to Middlesbrough's fantastic unbeaten run as they walked away with all 3 points thanks to a Timu Pukki penalty. This game very much being the tale of 2 penalties, but Norwich started fairly well for this game. Emi Buendia popped up in a couple of decent positions, looked to put a couple of chances on the plate for a couple of his other teammates, but Middlesbrough defensively, as to expect, really good. Dale Fry especially, I was really impressed with in this one. Came up with a couple of fantastic blocks, reads the game very well, and for the majority of this game kept Norwich at bay. Middlesbrough though, as the game went on in that first half, did grow into the game. Tim Krul was kept on his toes, and ultimately in the second half they did have the chance to go 1-0 up. They were given the penalty and it was converted. It did hit the back of the net, Tavernier, but it was ultimately ruled out as he had touched the ball twice. He sort of hit it onto his standing foot and to get past Tim Krul. Seemingly the only way to get past Middlesbrough at the moment is to put a penalty past them. They don't give away a lot of opportunities, but Timu Pukki slotted it away for Norwich, and that now leaves them top of the Championship. So Norwich, after 12 games have been played, they're now on 24 points, so averaging 2 points per game. If they manage to keep their form anywhere near this level for the rest of the season, they'll be there or thereabouts. After that, we had a 1-1 draw being played out between Millwall and Cardiff. It was a bit of a game of two halves, really. First off, there wasn't all too much in it, but Millwall took their chance well. Brilliant ball in from Williams from sort of a central position, and Matt Smith, one of the best people in the league to probably have in that area, does well to convert his header. In the second half, it was a game which was flowing in a similar sort of way up until Cardiff made their changes. Josh Murphy had a real impact on this match, and Millwall went from looking pretty comfortable in this one to being put under constant pressure. It was a brilliant goal that Cardiff equalised with a defence splitting pass from Murphy into Kiefer Moore, who just about has the pace and strength to hold off Jake Cooper. Finishes well in at the near post, and Cardiff got quite unlucky not to go on and win this one, to be honest with you. Boris Bilkowski kept Millwall in this game with a couple of fantastic saves It's won by Harry Wilson. Murphy once again does really well for this chance, cuts the ball back across the goal line, and Wilson almost converts, but Bilkowski does well to save with his feet. And there were a couple of other chances here and there as well. Bodvarsson did actually have a very good chance to win it in the end for Millwall, but ultimately it finished level between these two on Neil Harris's return to the Den. And then we finally saw Preston claiming their first win of the season at Deepdale, as we saw Sheffield Wednesday by 1-0. There's quite a bit to unpack with this game and some of the other stuff that's come out after it. But talking about the game itself, initially it was obviously affected by the red card. Josh Windass was sent off after 17 minutes. Initially when I was watching the game, I thought it was a little bit harsh, but seeing the replays of it, it's a little bit silly from Windass. He needs to be more aware of the people around him. He's given the red card in the end for a high foot and sort of lunge into Joe Rafferty, and seeing it on the replays, I did think it was a red card really. And I also thought that we should have had a stonewall penalty, to be completely honest with you. Scott Sinclair does really well, nice bit of trickery down the left hand side, gets away past Palmer, who brings him down, and it's right in front of the referee, but he doesn't give it as a penalty for whatever reason. In the second half though, we do make it 1-0. It's Tom Barkhuizen with actually a really nice finish. He's sort of falling back on himself, and then with his left foot volleys it into the far post past Kieran Westwood, who was back in net for Sheffield Wednesday, which I think was an interesting one. But in the end, it was a bit of a dull game, and for Sheffield Wednesday, they never really tried to get back into the game, did they? They were just sort of content with losing 1-0, it seemed. Obviously, it was always going to be a really difficult game, being down to 10 men for as long as they actually were. You know, it happened to Preston earlier on this season against Stoke. But even so, at no point of this match was I really nervous at all, which is a little bit strange. You know, Rudd didn't have anything to do for this one. I thought our subs were quite good. Ben Pearson came on and just saw out the game in midfield for us. Him and Paul Gallagher worked quite well. But obviously, one of the big talking points that's come out of this game, I'm sure all you guys have seen on social media, was the Darnell Fisher situation with Callum Patterson. I mean, it's a bit of an awkward one, really. I don't really know what to say about it. I think because of how everyone's reacted to it post-game and what's been made of it on social media, I'd be very surprised if Fisher, you know, sort of manages to escape this one without a ban or anything like that. And these incidents are a bit more regular than you perhaps initially think. Celtic's Ryan Christie was given a 2-game ban last season for doing pretty much the same thing. And as weird as it is, I think it is something that does happen every now and again in a football match. We've seen a few footballers come out on social media in defence of Darnell Fisher. But like I said, with everything that's been made of this, I would be quite surprised if he escapes this without a ban. Guys, let me know in the comments down below, what did you make of it all? It's all a bit weird, isn't it? After that, we then had QPR against Watford playing out a 1-0 draw. Frustrating one for the away side, who actually started out really well. It was quite an inventive short corner, which was well taken. Ben Wilmot makes it 1-0 for Watford, and the away side was very much on top for that first half. If it wasn't for a couple of really good saves by Dieng in net for QPR, then Watford could have had this one wrapped up after 45 minutes, but Dieng continued to impress me in net for QPR. He gave them that platform to then really push on at Watford for that second half, and Watford just seemed to sit off a little bit. I don't know if it was a bit of complacency, they just took their foot off the gas a little bit, but QPR came at them in that second half, and ultimately the goal they scored was actually really nicely worked. Lyndon Dykes with the layoff into Chair, who finishes well to make it 1-1 into the far post of Ben Foster's net. They had a couple of other really good chances, and after QPR's second half showing, then they'll probably been maybe a little bit disappointed that they didn't go on and win this one, but nevertheless, decent point for them at home, finishing 1-1 in the end. Next up then to an absolute cracker of a match, as we had Stoke 4, Huddersfield 3. It was a really bizarre one. Huddersfield took the lead, Eiting with a really nice finish, Harry Toffolo with another assist, but boy did Stoke bounce back. So far this season, it's only Ivan Toney and Adam Armstrong who have got more goal involvements in the Championship than Stoke City's Tyrese Campbell. We mentioned that heading into this season, really, Campbell was going to be a good one, but this could be the start of what's going to be an absolutely phenomenal season for Campbell in the Championship. He's got so many different attributes to his game. Both goals he scored in this one highlighted that really well. The first one, really nice positional sense and then a nice finish to top that off. He takes his second goal really well and has an involvement in the third as well, which was really Huddersfield's own doing. From trying to play out from the back, they mess it up a little bit, and I suppose that's sort of the double-edged sword that you sort of run the risk of playing with when you do try and have a philosophy that does play out from the back and is so possession focused. And Pereira had a bit of a game to forget for Huddersfield in net, which was a shame because they had their real moments of quality going forward, and Benza obviously got their second one and they head into half-time 3-2 down. I think Stoke's fourth goal though was the pick of the goals. Sam Clucas back in action for this one, and some brilliant footwork to dazzle his way past a couple of players and then just unleashes an absolute rocket. Huddersfield weren't done there though. Naby Sarr grabs his goal, this one from a set piece. He's always going to be a threat in those sort of areas. We saw that last season from his time at Charlton, but ultimately it was Stoke who went on to claim all 3 points. Huddersfield from a defensive aspect would have been disappointed. It was a bit of a chaotic match in general really from both sides, wasn't it? This point for Stoke now though lifts them up to 7th in in the Championship, just 1 point off the top 6. And then we had Swansea beating Rotherham by 1-0. Probably not as comfortable in the end as the home side would have liked, but 3 points for them nonetheless. It was Matt Grimes with his first goal of the season. Nice finish in the end, albeit Blackburn probably should have done a little bit better with this one. It was quite close to him. Grimes strikes it well from outside the box, don't get me wrong, but the ball sort of just squirms under the goalkeeper in the end. And Swansea had some brilliant chances to seal this one off. Jamal Lowe had a gilt-edged chance with the goal gaping, which he hit the post. Bidwell had a chance which was cleared off the line by Rotherham. But for Swansea, that second goal just wouldn't come. And towards the end of the match, Rotherham did have some, real nervy moments for the home side as they put them under pressure. They had the penalty appeal which was turned away, one ball which was whipped in from the corner. Freddie Woodman comes to claim it, drops the ball on his goal line, but luckily the ball is able to be scrambled away for Swansea. On another day, Rotherham get a tap in from there and then take a point from this game. But nevertheless, from the flow of the whole game and the amount of chances that Swansea created, the 3 points was deserved in the end, but Rotherham came very close to snatching something late on. And then to finish off, we had the goalless draw being played out between Wycombe and Brentford. Wycombe have been pretty good in these sort of big games so far this season. It was a similar one that they had against Watford, where it wasn't a case of them just like parking the bus like some people might expect. They very much gave as much as they got. And come the end of this match, it probably paints the picture that both goalkeepers ended up being like man of the match. Alsop for Wycombe made some brilliant saves, one from Mbima which he tipped wide. And then David Raya for Brentford was kept on his toes for several moments throughout this match really. Wycombe causing problems with balls coming into the box. Daryl Horgan had a chance late on which was saved well by Raya. And in terms of Brentford, still yet to really click into gear as of yet so far this season. Brentford fans, let me know down below what you think that's down to. I know you're still missing a few players. Norgard's still not back from injury yet. But even so, these last few games have been, albeit a little bit frustrating, I'd say. But guys, they were all the matches that did go on this weekend. In terms of my result of the weekend, I think that I'm going to give it to Norwich actually for ending Middlesbrough's fantastic unbeaten run, and that 3 points sees them now going top of the Championship. For my goal of the weekend then, I'm going to give it to Lewis Cook. It was an absolute worldie that he scored against Reading, but there were some fantastic contenders in here. Now though, without any further ado, let's hop into my midweek score predictions. So heading into these games, first of all, we got Luton going up against Birmingham. Now Luton don't lose a lot of football matches, especially at Kenilworth Road. They make it really difficult for the opposition. Birmingham can be a little bit hit and miss. It very much depends on which Birmingham turns up for this one, but I'm going to back the home side for this one. I'm going to go 1-0 Luton. QPR up against Rotherham. Like a lot of Rotherham matches so far this season, I expect this one to be quite tight with not all too much in it, but QPR are growing into the season a little bit, and I think that going forward they have shown a little bit more promise lately in terms of goal scoring touch. I'm going to go 2 on QPR in that game. Stoke up against Norwich. Really fascinating game. Stoke have looked quite good lately actually. Tyrese Campbell's bagging in the goals for them at the moment, but Norwich at top of the Championship now isn't going to be an easy ride. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw in that game. Stoke at home, they've not looked too bad so far this season. I'm also feeling a similar sort of way for Wycombe going up against Huddersfield. Huddersfield will come and look to dominate on the ball, similar to how Brentford went there at the weekend, but as we saw, Wycombe make it really difficult for teams at the moment. Going to go for another draw in that one, say 1-1. Now Barnsley up against Brentford is a really fascinating game. This was the last game of last season at Brentford, wasn't it, at Griffin Park, where this was the game where Barnsley survived in the Championship, winning it late on. Do you know what? I'm fancying Barnsley for this one as well. At this point in time, they seem to be, albeit a bit more of the informed side, and Brentford going forward doesn't seem to be completely clicking for them. I'm going to go 2-1 Barnsley in that game. Preston up against Blackburn. Big Lancashire derby coming up in midweek. Preston's record in these sort of games at Deepdale has been very good, you have to admit. But if we're not at 100% for this game, Blackburn will punish us. It's a game which I see being quite end-to-end, a lot more entertaining, I also think, than a lot of our other games at Deepdale so far this season. Blackburn, I don't think, are going to come to Deepdale and be happy with the point. They're going to look to play football. I'm going to go for an entertaining 2-2 draw in that game. I see goals being scored in it. Bournemouth up against Forest. I'm going to go 2-0 Bournemouth in that game. Forest had their chances this weekend, but aren't clinical enough at the moment, and Bournemouth, I think, will have taken quite a bit of confidence from that comeback against Reading. Into Wednesday night's games, we then got Middlesbrough going up against Derby. For Derby, this isn't the ideal fixture that they want at the moment. Middlesbrough will be looking to bounce back from that game against Norwich, where there wasn't all too much in it, to be completely honest with you. And with how much Derby have struggled to score from open play, Middlesbrough is going to be a tough nut to crack. I'm going to go 1-0 to Borough in that game. Millwall up against Reading. Will Reading's misfortunes continue into this game? I think they might, Once again, for a side like Reading, who's on a bit of a dodgy run at the moment, an away game at the Den isn't the ideal fixture to get back up and going. I'm going to go 2-0 Millwall in that game. Bristol City against Watford is a really interesting one in midweek, because it's one which is going to tell us quite a bit about Bristol City's level at the moment, and if Watford can bounce back from that, sort of dropping points at the weekend. I'm going to back Bristol City for this one, I think that they can be quite an effective side when they don't have the ball and playing on transitions and on counter-attacks, and I think that that's where they may cause Watford a bit of trouble for this one. I'm going to go 2-1 Bristol City. Coventry up against Cardiff. For Coventry, I'm interested to see if they continue to playing this sort of different style where they look to be a little bit more reserved going forward, but they add that defensive protection to their game. Cardiff, though, away from home have picked up a couple of decent results so far this season. On the road, they seem to be a little bit more effective, actually. They got quite unlucky maybe not to win the game this weekend at Millwall. I'm going to go 1-0 Cardiff in that game, although I don't see all too much being in it. And then finally, we see Swansea going up against Sheffield Wednesday. Another tough away game for Tony Pulis in charge at Wednesday. Obviously, Josh Windass will be suspended for this one for Wednesday after being sent off against Northend. I'm going to go for another 1-0 home victory for Swansea in this game. They seem to be on a decent roll at the moment. And Sheffield Wednesday going forward at the weekend just didn't really offer that much. But as you can see to the side of me, those are my score predictions for what I see happening in the midweek games coming up in the Championship. So as always, do get your score predictions in the comments down below for a chance to be involved in the next video and get yourselves onto that prediction league. But guys, apart from that will now wrap it up for today's video. So thanks so much for watching. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like. It is always massively appreciated. And like I say, please do subscribe if you are new around here. We're pushing our way towards 30,000 subscribers. But apart from that, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.